Support for the It's All Happening podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Please go to itsallhappeningshow.com and use our Amazon portal to buy your stuff. Hello, podcast freaks. What's going on? This is the It's All Happening podcast. This is episode number 26. Thank you so much for listening. For all of you podcast freaks out there, I'm sure you're going to be very pleased with this week's episode. It features none other than the astonishingly inspiring Alex and Allyson Gray and the stupendous Duncan Trussell. Yes, all of them together in one room. The four of us got together in an undisclosed secret location in Hollywood, California, an edifice that came complete with melting walls, dripping ceilings, that had chandeliers swinging about with gorgeous pixies flying from one to the other. There were secret garden gnomes wandering the room, serving us elixirs and sacred medicine that oozed from the various delivery devices, and fire-breathing, new thought, ancient wisdom, ceremonial fire pits. We communed in laughter and celebration as we discussed everything from the meaning in ancient mystic traditions to the jewel net of Indra, to engaged inertia, and the amazing hotbed of all things awesome in upstate New York that is called Cosm, or the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. That sounds like a lot, and it's going to be a lot. It's an amazing podcast. Alex and Allyson Gray, both of them are extraordinary visionary artists and thought leaders in their respective fields that kind of go beyond even just the visual traditions and the actual artifacts that they create. And go to alexgray.com or AllysonGray.com for more information on them, or COSM, COSM.org for more information on the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors and everything that they're doing. Really, you can't say enough about the Grays. You really can't. I mean, I don't think I know anybody else who has manifested a reality for themselves like the Grays have. Not only have they followed their visionary inspiration to create an ecosystem that supports them, but they've built a temple. I mean, literally, they have built a temple and created a new paradigm for the way that we think about spirituality and community. And of course, Duncan Trussell, you all know who Duncan Trussell is, the amazing, uncomparable Duncan Trussell, host of the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, one of the great podcasters, one of the great minds, and glad to call him a new friend of mine, really enjoying each other's company. And it was so awesome of him to join us and to do this. And also a big shout out to Duncan Trussell for helping with the sound on this podcast. It was the first remote podcast that we've ever done on the It's All Happening show. And so please excuse the sound levels. They kind of jump up and around all over the place and things like that. But it's perfect for this podcast because that's what went on. It is. There were, there were garden gnomes and pixies that were flying around the room that were knocking us over, and interdimensional, decentralized, non-humanoid thought teachers who came in and floored us and knocked us to the ground and helped deliver this conversation into a deliverable form. So the sound, par for the course, right? So I hope you enjoy this episode. Here we go. Are we recording?
We're rolling. Is yours rolling?
Mine's rolling.
Okay, cool.
This is the podcast. This is It's All Happening podcast. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Zach.
Duncan Trussell, Alex Gray, Allyson Gray. What's up, guys? I'm so stoked and honored that we take this time to sit here in Hollywood, hanging out together. Yeah, it's so cool. So as I was driving over here, I was thinking about how to open up the podcast, and I was thinking a lot about connectivity, the global brain, neuronal networks, and things of that sort. And the idea was kind of occurring to me between things like what Duncan does with his podcast, I'm starting to podcast now, and even the work that both you, Alex and Allyson, do with your art, that it's representative of something a little bit bigger than just the personal experience, but that it's tapping into a collective experience, a window into a collective conscience. And what we can do with podcasts is we can extend this conversation around the globe. But Alex, when you're making your art, is this something that's happening? Is this a representation of a bigger conversation, or is it personal?
I think that is the nature of the mystical experience, is that you're being given general orienting principles symbolically. There's a teaching that's always occurring in the sort of mystic visionary state. And so the artists are trying to grab a pinch of the multidimensional teaching that's going on in that state and bring it into their artwork. And to the degree of clarity and depth that the artist is able to sort of open themselves, they can become like a lens to view this inner domain in a veristic, in a representational kind of way. We're mapping domains of awareness that have been mapped previously by other sacred traditions, actually. You know, when the heavens and hells and hybrid human animal creatures and things like that are part of the divine imagination. That's the human inheritance. And that is what unites us as a tribe. That the people, I think of the mycelial underground network of intelligence that is that mushrooms or fruits in festival culture and other outcroppings like a podcast. And in the realms of a podcast, each listener is like a synapse in a neuron, and that when they receive the message, the meme or the worldview in the work symbolically, it's like you've gotten a dream teaching, and you're I think of visionary art as operating like, I imagine an eye in a triangle. That's pretty easy to imagine. At the pinnacle or apex of this pyramid, that's representative of God consciousness, right, and infinite awareness, and divine imagination. That sends off in a triangular, because you're going down one side of the triangle. It shoots a vision into the mind of the artist or anyone who's open to receiving the vision. So, for simplicity's sake, let's imagine a profile of a person, and inside of their head, that now is that eye in a triangle. They've received the vision from the Godhead. And so their action is to bring that vision out onto a canvas. So now imagine a canvas in the center, kind of underneath that apex eye in a triangle, and the artist is reproducing that vision. On the other side of the pyramid now, or the triangle, we've got the receiver of that vision out in the outer world, the viewer, the audience. And so their reception of that vision, with whatever degree of clarity the artist has been able to bring forward, enables them to access the Godhead in a kind of loop that is the visionary art process. It's the call of the divine through mediums.
Do you think this is something that can be learned, this expression of that you're talking about, that this is something like, I know you guys do this at COSM, and we could talk about what COSM is in a second, but do you think that this, because like but for both of you guys, what's blows me away so much is that in my experience, in my lifetime, like there's only really been a few people who can really articulate the psychedelic experience. McKenna with words, Jerry Garcia for me with music, and you guys with visual stuff. And Like, few people, not too many people, myself included, I'm just kind of starting to learn it now as I'm, 42 years old, but how to be able to kind of articulate my experience and bring something back. When I was 20 years old, it was just like, oh man, this is far out. I don't know what to say, but you have displayed something. So is this teachable, you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that the fact is you were witnessing something.
Yeah.
And if pressed to articulate in some way, visually or even a word cloud of various associations and things like that, they may make no sense in retrospect, but you can train yourself, and it's actually been part of the artist's stock and trade for a long time. Degas recommended, the best technique for drawing is to look at someone on one floor of a building and then go down to another floor to draw it. And that it's kind of like those psychology experiments where somebody bursts into a room and does something crazy, and then the teacher interviews everybody. What just happened here? And so everybody's got a different perspective, and so the vision is a little like that. Can you describe the perp?
Yeah.
And how many tentacles did they have? And so you have to, be familiar with journeying enough not to be terrified into a clamp down of I can't look at this. This is too much.
Right.
Which is usually
right.
It's overwhelming, so you try to absorb and become one with this flow.
Well, let's talk about like the repeatability for a second and being familiar with, shamanic explorations and the journeying, for sure. Do you think that, or how is your experience with the repeatability these days? Because obviously, well, I would think, not obviously, but that your experience, you're getting different things from journeys than you did when you were 25 years old now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I think that really, God, I was probably younger than 25. I was probably like 22 or 23 when I had what would have to be, one of the most profound psychedelic experiences I ever had, and it felt like the most acid and the farthest out among those. Those are the completely memorable. I've completely gone to another or many other planes than I can. This is beyond comprehension.
Right.
And so completely erasing your identification with the body is one of those things. And June 3rd, 1976 was when Allyson and I had our universal mind lattice experience that completely reoriented
mind lattice. What was that? What happened?
Well, we had determined that we would be tripping that day.
Okay.
And as was our custom, we'd been doing it since we met back in 1975 on May 30th. So it was only about a year later, June 3rd. You could say it was a wedding or a kind of a first-year anniversary from God. We made it through the first year, and I don't know. It was really good shit. It is all I can say. And we wound up kind of in that, psychedelic wormhole of everything going really fast and being very colorful. And then, pow, you're into a realm of just light. But it's kind of like, the shape of a torus.
Yeah.
But these were kind of like circular toruses, something more like an apple, like that kind of toroidal form. So you were no longer a physical body, but you were this fountain and drain of light. And it was iridescent. It was, a living kind of energy. And the energy was the energy of love, and every other being that existed in every dimension was one of these balls of light, of love. And so that was how we all connected. We were all the same, but each one of us was a different viewpoint in the body of God that seemed endless and infinite.
It's totally Vedantic, too, by the way.
The jewel net of Indra.
The jewel net of Indra, right? Your Allison's painting, yeah.
You want to talk about it from your perspective, Allyson?
You sure you want me to?
I wish you would.
And the jewel net of Indra. I mean, that work is, and Indra getting into the god of space and time, that's a whole other thing. But I love, once I found out what that painting was called, I was like, oh my God, you're right, that's it.
How about the side note? Very quickly, a side note. Forgive me for chiming in with something vulgar, but it is from the Ramayana. Do you know Indra ended up covered in vaginas?
What?
I swear to God, it's in the Ramayana. Indra, because Indra was not like I didn't understand what Indra was. I still don't.
Well, I'll tell you that Indra, just simply for people who don't know this, is the Hindu god of space, and in the abode of Indra, that means in the place where Indra lives, is a net that extends infinitely in all directions. And at every facet of the net, meaning every place that the net interconnects with the other threads of the net, let's say, there's a jewel sitting there that's so highly polished that it interreflects all the other jewels in the net. So that is a Hindu story or visualization of the abode of Indra, the god of space. So I felt that description described, or my experience of the universal mind lattice. Alex called it the universal mind lattice. I chose Jewel Net of Indra, but the images that we created, Jewel Net of Indra and universal mind lattice, refer to that experience on June 3rd. And I feel that I have it at every successive, to some degree. We were trying to use the phrase yesterday, a vista of pulsating nodes. And we had this guy did not know what we were talking about, a vista of pulsating nodes.
Right.
But a vista of pulsating nodes is like a layer, like seeing through a layer of the jewel net of Indra, where each of the jewels are nodes, and it's pulsating, and it's a vista, like you see out as far as you can see in perspective grid. But for us, it was kind of like the sucking and blowing, suck holes and blowholes of each individual one of us that are like, spewing out energy and sucking in energy. We're all like that. We put out and we bring in. So when you essentialize all beings, that's what they do. They bring in and they blow out, and there's an energetic pulsation, and it's infinite in all directions. And that's kind of what the Jewel Net of Indra and the Universal Mind Lattice represent. Right. And you can find those images, at our websites if you want to know what they look like. Universal Mind Lattice on alexgray.com and Jewel Net of Indra on AllysonGray.com. You can see our work. We're on the radio, so you can't see our work.
We're on the internet radio, but I think essentially you just described, Allyson, what mystical practices, method aside, it doesn't matter, psychedelics, yoga, bhakti, kirtan, whatever it is, this is the essence of it, is it expands your ability to see a few more nodes. Because if you don't engage in any of these practices, you get so myopic in your point of view and your peripheral vision that the only node you can see is sort of your ego.
Well, it flattens difference.
Right?
It flattens differences and makes us all one. So all the nodes are sucking and blowing, and the energy is apparent. And it's blowing into me, and I'm blowing it out to you, and so it takes care of differences and makes you feel unified with the net, the great net of beings.
And this is what the multiverse is, right, Duncan?
I'm glad you asked. I can't answer that. I know what you're saying. I know. I've had some very vague contact with it. It's sometimes people will talk about the DMT experience, the sense of being in some shared space.
Yes.
They call it, I've heard, the Mayan tripping room is one name that I've heard for it, but there's a lot of cool names for it. Some people even described it as a casino, or like a kind of like, I think McKenna would talk about the circus-like aspect of this place.
Yeah.
But the feeling of when you get to this place that you guys are talking about, the essential nature revealed by the psychedelic, and the feeling of this place being quite impermanent compared to that place, and that we all have kind of signed up for this shared experience together here. We're all running into each other for a reason. And it's that feeling of like, oh yeah, this is where we come from.
Yeah.
And this is where we return to, and in between those two spots, we experience this exhalation and inhalation that you're talking about, or sucking and blowing in the form of all our life endeavors.
Right. But this, and I'm noticing this with you, Duncan, I'm just kind of watching your arc a little bit. This inhalation, exhalation that you're speaking of, you are reflecting very similar experiences of the DMT experience, but now through the Ram Dass experience and the love portal experience. We were talking about the Dalai Lama experience earlier. You're reflecting these experiences with the same language, I'm starting to notice. And your arc has changed a little bit.
Yeah, it changed.
Yeah.
Well, that's the old... Man, that's the old... that's what happens when you...
It's what happens when you don't get attached to the method.
I think it's what happens when you... if you experience some kind of loss... this idea of very quickly, can I just say something because I can't get out of my head? I embarrass myself a little bit. And let me just say, please Google search Indra covered in vaginas. I don't seem like an asshole.
We had to go
I'm not
back.
making it up. It happened.
In the Ramayan, too, by the way.
Yeah, look it up. It's there. I didn't make it up. I wasn't trying to make a dumb joke. It's in there, and I was quite surprised by it.
I sense a painting coming on.
Just check it out, because there's pictures of it. Happened. He was Indra was not always following rules, and he got in trouble. And the curse was, we'll cover you in vaginas, because it was some kind of it happened to him. It was some kind of lesson, but obviously it's Hinduism, so it's a million times deeper in the meaning. So Can
you imagine the gangbang of that? I mean,
wow.
I'm telling you.
It's like there's a lot of availability there.
Yes, exactly. So I'm sorry that, and as far as what you're talking about, Zach, I think that what happened to me was what happens to a lot of people is you were a temporal trust fund kid, where you think that you've got infinite years ahead of you, and the people around you have infinite time with them.
Yeah.
And then things happen in life where the truth is revealed. Oh, look.
At some point, yeah.
You're going to get sick. You got sick. You got the thing that that you thought only other people get. Oh, look, your mom died. Well, what do you know? Moms really do die. And then from those things, suddenly you're like, holy fucking shit, man. My temporal bank account is not at the level that I thought it was. And then that causes you to start taking a lot of these teachings and at least attempting to apply them with a bit more seriousness, even though I don't really like that word in association with it. So maybe that's what you're seeing there. It's just eventually you get to the point where you're if you're talking about the psychedelic experience transitioning into the spiritual experience, I think it's just and
the outcomes being one of the same
outcome.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say, as long as you brought it up, that I have a theory that everybody doesn't have something, and so if you grew up with a lot, there's something you don't have.
Right.
And every person I know who grew up with a lot had things that they didn't have. I mean, it was just, there was always something that they didn't have. They couldn't have children, they didn't have love life, they had an accident, they had to deal with something. everybody doesn't have something. Why? Because God makes it that way, so that
Right.
we have to overcome things and become bigger and better and stronger. And,
Right. Like we were talking about at lunch before, like you have to go, like you were talking, Alex, about you got a shitty review in the LA Times once, right? Or you guys have maybe a couple neighbors around Cosm who don't like you. Most do, but you have a couple.
Yes.
But you have to have someone in your life who tells you suck, at some point, or like, you're full of shit,
Those people are just
a couple now and
lame.
then.
But people that tell you the truth as they see it, that's a whole different thing.
That's a whole different
thing. If they
thing,
have
right.
a dispute with you or they have a difference with you and they can tell you powerfully their truth as they see it, then that's valid. But just to say you suck, I mean, that's just lame.
Yes, that's
the difference.
I think that maybe there was a little venom in this critic, but I think she was sincere in her hatred of the work, and I think she was gifted in her articulation of the way that she hated it, and so I don't fault her or even think that it's untrue. That's her perspective on the work, and I after I'd kind of healed from whatever that was, like a year after that, I was looking at my own journals, and I said the same and worse in my own journals about myself and about my work.
Wow.
And so if you can't completely lacerate yourself and cut to the, to the quick, if you're not critiquing yourself, how are you going to improve?
Right.
Right. But also too, though, I mean, it brings up like some very, human traits, like you're talking. I mean, I'm sure at some point, Alex and Allyson too, and all of us, and Duncan, and that you get into this space to where you're creating art, you're creating content, you're creating expression, and that just comes from your heart. But then you cross the line where, oh wow, other people are starting to like this expression.
Right.
But that's a real thing. I mean, like you guys, like, I don't like to use this word, but you guys do have like a brand, and the brand.
Somebody tattooed my letters onto them, and I think there's probably more than one. Actually.
Wow.
Right.
It's really, the meme has spread. I mean, there's the Alex Gray phenomenon of hundreds of thousands of people tattooed with his art on it, of course, and we all know this, and it's sometimes beautiful and sometimes less beautiful. But it's a great honor, is it not?
And isn't it a repercussion of an energetic release? This is something, when I think, because I've seen many, 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 many Alex Gray tattoos, and I think this is what happens when you go into that other place and bring the energy back into this place, is the energy affects this place in more ways than people going, wow, that's incredible. It gets into the material of the place. So when you see your work getting tattooed on people, I think you're witnessing the way. How do we know there's wind? Well, the trees blow. How do you know that someone has had a mystical experience? Well, one way you know is people start tattooing the experience onto their flesh, that it actually begins to manifest in the universe.
It's because they've seen it too. Like with a lot of your work, Alex, like I've seen some of your work where I go, oh, I've been there too.
Yep.
And I've never seen anybody's been able to say it before or paint it, whatever. But I've been there too.
Actually, I think that we, and Alex particularly, but me by association, have been extremely lucky that that Alex's work is so iconic that it's become a context for like a bridge, so that people, like when they see the work, they either like hate it, or mostly they don't care about it, or they don't get it, or they've been there and they understand it, and they feel like, oh, that, and then suddenly people remember who showed them for the first time Alex's work. We ask a lot of people when they come over to us, like, do you remember the first time you ever saw Alex's work? And they not only remember when it was, but who shared it with them. That's what I mean when I say it's a bridge. It's like suddenly it's your father or your best friend or this high school friend that you'll never forget, because when a lot of times, and this is what we're really lucky about, is that a lot of times when they're tripping, somebody will open the book
That's
to
right.
sort of, you've not seen this. Let me show you
That's
this,
how it
and
happens.
that is the impact moment that we get to benefit from, I guess, by being now associated with these people
wild.
at their epiphany, at their apex moments. Most people say that when they did LSD, it was a peak experience. That means like up there with having a baby or something.
I remember. I don't remember where I was, but I remember the first time I saw your art, and I was tripping, and I remember thinking, "Oh, I can't look at that right now. This is what? It must be wild to know you guys are inducing that response all over the planet. Probably at any given moment. I would say right now there's probably countless people going, holy shit.
Yeah, one really trippy thing I remember with your work, Alex, was like I as far as I could recall right now, like one of the first exposures I had to your work was through Tool. And when I first started listening to Tool, like I was a deadhead primarily, and Tool was I love Tool now, one of the great bands out there, and they're still going. It's so awesome and they're amazing. But at the time I thought like, whoa, this is pretty hard and pretty aggressive. Whoa, this is intense. But that they're seeing it too. Like I kind of was reserving some of it to like, oh, this is just kind of like my kind of loosey-goosey hippie shit, but no, they're seeing it too.
Right.
And it was kind of like this collective conscious, and it kind of opened me up to like, to getting into some harder music and some more intense sounds, it's a really interesting offshoot of this.
Do you guys, have you guys contemplated the reality that your art isn't just going to stop in that because of expanding technology, these spaces you've created are going to be transformed into virtual dimensions? Art,
and as everything, media in general, has a branching effect. So, for instance, when movies came in, radio didn't stop.
Right.
That's correct.
As we're on the radio now, and some of the most fun I've ever had on the radio is now. Listening to your podcast and other people's podcasts. Radio is really fun now.
Right.
People do listen to radio, and just audio, too. A lot of people are working, but they like to have it going on, and they like to listen to stuff. So radio didn't die because film came, and neither will painting has never died because, say, the moving image or animation.
I don't mean that. I mean, someone's going to scan it, put it into a three-dimensional perspective, and create a way for you to enter the painting and exist inside it. And to me, what I think is really fascinating about art and all visual art, photography, painting, is that this is the these are seeds of universe. These are portals into universes that are going to be sort of inflated by technology.
Yeah, man,
and
totally.
people and animated through artificial intelligence.
It's happening already. It's happening now.
This is a mutation of our consciousness. I'm completely convinced, and like I'm even like dropping the word artificial from artificial intelligence lately. Because like think of it like this way. It's like it's overly simplistic, but just as an apple falls from the tree, virtual reality, artificial intelligence falls from the human. To me, there's no real difference. This is just a manifestation of
the imagination.
Right.
Exactly.
And it exists a form of Godhead. I really think it's true.
It's like a kind of... There's rock, and it's been made over millions of years and condensed into a certain crystalline form. That's a certain form of material intelligence that the divine has woven the physical manifest realm with. And so if a creature that is part of the evolutionary process, ourselves, we could say we're advanced from a rock, but we sure won't live as long, but we're supposedly at this cutting edge of consciousness evolution. I mean, perhaps related to the consciousness of granite, but we've
experienced the consciousness of granite.
What's
I
it
think
like?
most trippers
happens there.
Is like a statement that was in our journal from an early trip. Is
it is, but I think that it's possible to do so if you're tripping. You get the vibration of all creatures and all states of matter and things, including granite. Of course, you recognize that you are the granite because God is boundless, and you are God. So you are connected with everything and all processes that are going on.
That's so intense. Like Ram Dass does this thing within the last few years where he does this whole exercise, like going beyond just like, I love you, Alex. I love you, Duncan. I love you, chair. I love you, wall. I love you, dirty carpet with poop stains. I love it all. It's all a crazy, weird manifestation of God.
Exactly. It's the whole visual spectacle, and God went to a lot of trouble to bring it about. So the least we could do is enjoy it.
Even the poop-stained carpet has its place, too.
But do you ever think about that, too, though? I mean, this is something that you must experience. I can't imagine how much you guys experience. You must experience a lot of moments where people are like, you changed my life. You're amazing. And where people begin to get more fixated on you and your personalities than maybe even the art. And sometimes I think God must get really frustrated if we want to embody God just for fun as the creator that has made all of this and with some kind of intentionality behind it. Then the people who are always talking about God are really like people who are always talking about the artist instead of the thing that is created, And it seems like sometimes I go back and forth, in Bhakti, this is the idea of like Krishna, the various forms of Krishna, falling in love with Krishna, the embodiment of everything. And then sometimes I think maybe that's not the move. Maybe it isn't about, maybe the artist is being anonymous on purpose. Right? Maybe there's a reason for the anonymity. There's a reason there's no true signature in the granite. There is no signature here. There's just the mysterious work of art, and our job is to just stay in that point instead of always getting caught up in the whole God thing.
Well, like